Welcome to the Deep Dive. You send us the sources, we dig in, and pull out the key insights so you can get up to speed fast.
And today, we've got something really different. We're looking at excerpts from Bernard Werber's novel, The Empire of the Angels.
Yeah, definitely not your typical source material. This is quite a journey.
It really is. It's a narrative exploring death, the afterlife, all through Werber's very unique imagination. It blends storytelling with philosophy, and honestly, there's some unexpected humor in there, too.
Absolutely. Our listener gave us a real mix here. We've got like a personal account of dying.
Right.
Anthropological ideas on burial rituals, a nurse talking about how we deal with death now, descriptions of heaven, philosophical chats between angels. It's a lot.
It is. So our mission really is to unpack the core ideas Werber's presenting here about death, what might come next, maybe even how consciousness could evolve.
And we want to make it engaging, easy to follow, hopefully give you some things to think about.
Let's dive in.
Okay, so it kicks off pretty dramatically. The narrator dies in a plane crash. A Boeing 747.
Yeah, quite the start. And what's immediately striking is his feeling the sensation of detaching from his body.
Right, like he's suddenly separate from the physical event.
Exactly. He mentions this silver thread, too, like a final connection, maybe, or a memory of one.
And then the perspective shifts. Suddenly he's flying, seeing everything from above.
Totally different from our usual grounded view, isn't it? It flips things around.
And then, almost right away, he sees people he knows. His wife, Rose.
And Amandine, his former mistress.
Yeah. And this triggers a memory. They were all Thanet knots together before.
Ah, yes. The Thanet knots. That's a term their friend Raoul Razorback coined. It means navigators of death.
Navigators of death. That's quite a concept. It suggests death isn't just an endpoint.
Exactly. It frames it as a realm, something you could potentially explore, maybe even map out. It really makes you think about what Werber's suggesting consciousness might be.
It does. And that idea, death as a navigable space, it really bumps up against how society usually sees it.
Definitely. Which leads nicely into the next bit, this anthropology professor's perspective.
What's his take?
Well, he argues that human civilization, its very beginnings, are tied to how we started burying our dead, ritually.
Really? How far back are we talking?
He points to sites near the Dead Sea, maybe 120, 140,000 years old.
Wow, that's ancient.
It is, and he suggests this points to a very early human belief that, something continued after death, something maybe even magical.
So this mystery of death, it's been fundamental to us for a very, very long time.
It seems so, but then you get this sharp contrast with the palliative care nurse's view.
Yeah, her perspective sounds quite different, almost critical.
Very critical. She's pretty blunt about it. She thinks modern society tries to hide death, sanitize it.
How so?
Like in hospitals, everything's clean, controlled. She argues it shields younger people from the reality of dying, creating this kind of societal denial.
Which is the total opposite of those ancient rituals where death was maybe more visible, more part of life.
Exactly, a real dichotomy there.
So this narrator, after he detaches, after realizing death might be navigable, where does he actually go?
He ends up in what's called Fifth Heaven. It's described as the yellow territory or the world of knowledge.
The world of knowledge, what's that like?
The feeling is just immense understanding. Like answers are just flowing into him, even for questions he didn't know he had.
Wow. Just effortless knowing. So death opens up deeper awareness, perhaps.
That seems to be the implication in Werber's world, yeah. But it's not all just peaceful learning. There's a judgment phase.
Ah, okay. Judgment by whom?
By archangels, initially. But then there's a twist. Émile Zola.
The writer.
Émile Zola, yeah. He shows up and acts as the narrator's lawyer. It's unexpected.
Zola defending someone in the afterlife. Okay, you have my attention. What's his argument?
He basically tears into the archangels, accuses them of falsifying the weighing of the narrator's soul.
Falsifying it.
Well, he claims they manipulated the scales, botched the whole trial, really. He says they condemned the narrator just for being curious and points out his guardian angel wasn't even there for the judgment. Procedural errors in heaven.
So he's questioning the whole divine process, challenging authority.
Pretty much. It's like a heavenly courtroom drama.
What happens then? Does Zola win the case?
His arguments definitely shake things up. The initial condemnation gets reconsidered, and ultimately, the narrator is given a choice.
A choice between what?
Two tunnels appear. One is ochre-colored, that one leads back to Earth to reincarnation. The other is navy blue, heading to the land of angels.
He just knows what they mean.
Apparently, yeah. It's an intuitive understanding. And then Archangel Raphael straight up asks him, what do you want?
So free will is still a factor, even here.
Seems crucial, yeah.
And he chooses the blue tunnel, becomes an angel.
He does. And there's a transformation. He perceives this iridescent halo around himself.
A visible change.
Yes, but then Edmund Wells, another key figure we meet, clarifies something important. He says the biggest change isn't physical, it's in his outlook. His whole way of seeing beings, events, everything shifts.
A change in perspective. Okay. And what's his job now as a rookie angel?
His first assignment is to guide 3 specific human souls. They're currently fetuses.
Guide them towards what?
Towards achieving a score of 600 points. That seems to be the threshold for getting out of the cycle of reincarnation.
Right. So his focus shifts from his own journey to helping others on theirs. How does that work? What shapes their path?
Well, according to Wells, there are 3 main ingredients, you could say.
Okay.
First, heredity. That's about a quarter of the influence. Think genes, family patterns, environment.
Makes sense. What else?
Then there's karma, also about a quarter.
Yeah.
This is the stuff carried over from past lives, unfinished business, old desires, mistakes, traumas, echoes from the past.
So past lives directly impact the present one.
That's the idea. And the third element, the biggest chunk initially, is free will. 50%.
50%.
Yeah.
So choice is still huge.
Absolutely. And what's interesting is Wells says free will can actually change those percentages over time. You're not totally locked into your heredity or karma.
So there's always room for agency, for making different choices.
Yeah.
That's hopeful, actually.
It is. It's a dynamic mix.
Tell me about these 3 souls he has to guide. Who are they?
Okay, so there's Jacques, who's French. His genes suggest he might be strong, but also prone to illness. Then Venus, an American fetus, generally good health predicted. And Igor, Russian, supposedly excellent health.
Why the focus on their health?
Well, Edmund Wells seems interested in studying how their physical condition might affect their personality development.
Like a nature-nurture thing, but with an afterlife twist.
Sort of, yeah. And even before birth, they're having distinct experiences. Jacques apparently senses his father's touch.
Wow.
Venus has this flash of a past life. She was a rich Chinese trader who died traumatically.
That's specific. And Igor.
Igor's prenatal environment is described as hostile. His mother's engaging in harmful behavior like drinking. So they're all starting from very different places.
Definitely sounds like it. Different challenges right from the womb.
Mm.
So how do angels like our narrator actually guide these people? Is it like direct messages?
Not usually. Their main method is influencing dreams.
Dreams. How does that work?
They tailor the dream scenes based on the individual's own references, their memories, culture, what resonates with them emotionally.
Okay, so personalized dream guidance.
Pretty much. They also use signs, which are more like direct interventions in the waking world, but they're not always noticed or understood correctly. It's different from how people in the past maybe relied on omens.
Right, so subtle nudges mostly.
Yeah. Although Raoul, the Thanatot friend, he gets annoyed with the narrator for focusing so much on these clients.
Oh,
Raoul's still got that explore bug. He wants to push further, explore more of the afterlife, not just babysit humans.
so there's tension there. Duty versus discovery.
Exactly, which kind of leads into this debate they have about what it's actually like being an angel.
Okay, the pros and cons of angelic existence.
You got it. Raoul really misses things. Tactile sensation, for one. He misses dreaming. And he complains there are no books, no libraries in heaven.
No books.
Yeah.
That would be tough for some people.
Right. But Edmund Wells has a counterargument. He stresses the freedom from pain, the universal access to knowledge.
That sounds pretty good.
And he argues that mortal lives, with all their messiness and struggle, actually make for better stories than any book.
That's an interesting perspective, the richness of lived experience versus pure knowledge.
It's a fascinating trade-off Verber presents.
So what's the bigger picture view of humanity here, from the angelic perspective?
Edmund Wells sees humanity as a kind of missing link.
Between what?
Between pure animal instinct and higher wisdom. He looks at all the human souls they guide, sees them as these luminous cores inside bubbles, and just emphasizes the sheer scale of it all. Their clientele, as he calls it.
It gives you that cosmic perspective, looking down on us all.
It really does. And it leads to different ideas about how best to help humanity evolve.
Like what?
Well, there's a mention of Mother Teresa's viewpoint, which Wells calls a bit simplistic, the idea that maybe shared suffering makes individual pain easier to bear.
Okay.
But another perspective argues for striving for universal richness, not shared misery.
A different approach entirely.
Yeah. And Wells, teaching these new angels, seems to favor patience. He talks about respecting the free will of angels, letting them find their own guidance methods.
So even the guides have choices and different philosophies. It's not monolithic.
Not at all. Which brings us to another interesting concept. Transgressors.
Transgressors. Rule breakers.
Exactly. There's this recurring source book in the story, the Encyclopedia of Relative and Absolute Knowledge.
Ah, yes, the encyclopedia.
Right. And one entry suggests that society actually needs people who push boundaries, who challenge the norms.
Needs them. What?
To drive evolution, basically, to force society to question itself and change, even if those individuals often end up, marginalized or sacrificed.
So the disruptors are actually essential, even if they pay a price. That's provocative.
It is, and you see echoes of these big ideas in the lives of the three souls.
Jacques, Venus, and Igor. How are they doing?
They all face pretty tough starts. Igor, we already mentioned, is literally fighting for survival against his mother's actions in the womb.
Yeah, that sounded rough.
Venus gets pushed into the modeling world really young with all the pressure that brings, and Jacques is dealing with his own internal battles.
And Igor's situation, does it connect to that idea of karma?
It seems to. Werber links it to the concept of unresolved issues carrying over. He references another character, Felix Kerbos, a previous Thanatonaut, who also had a really difficult, hateful mother. It suggests these patterns can repeat across lives if they're not dealt with.
A kind of karmic cycle playing out. And this encyclopedia keeps popping up. It sounds central.
Oh, absolutely. It's attributed to Edmund Wells, and it's like the foundational text for their understanding of reality.
What kinds of things are in it?
All sorts. Big philosophical ideas like how language shapes thought, or this concept called the CRE.
CREQ, what's that?
It basically stands for the idea that humans are constantly conditioned by other people's expectations and influences.
So it provides the underlying rules of their universe.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it, yeah.
Now, the angels, they do intervene sometimes, right? You mentioned signs.
They do. There are examples like they subtly influence the Miss Universe judges to help Venus win.
Really? Is that allowed?
Well, that's the question, isn't it? It raises ethical points about free will. How much should they nudge things? Where's the line?
A slippery slope, potentially.
And they send specific dream scenes to Jacques to inspire his writing, but the way people respond also changes. Igor, for instance, initially focuses on signs, but later relies more on his intuition.
So the levers for influence shift.
Exactly. It's not static.
There's another darker concept from the encyclopedia mentioned too, right? About masochism.
Ah, yes. That entry defines masochism as a kind of strategy, a way to control fear.
Control fear.
By proactively causing the thing you're afraid of. The idea is if you bring about the pain yourself, you feel like you have some agency over it, some control over your destiny, even if it's negative.
That's a really bleak way of looking at control, but maybe insightful for some psychology.
Potentially, yeah. It's definitely a thought-provoking entry.
What about the relationships for these three? Do they find connections?
Their paths diverge quite a bit. Venus has a series of more fleeting relationships. Jacques is searching for something deeper, more meaningful.
And Igor, his start was so difficult.
His path involves time in the Chechen War, a lot of struggle for recognition. His relationships are complex, tied into those difficult circumstances. Each interaction, good or bad, adds to their karmic score, moving them along their path.
So their personal lives are constantly shaping their spiritual journey.
Constantly. But then the angels themselves have this really profound experience during a cosmic trip.
What happens?
They go exploring way out there, and they encounter literal nothingness.
Nothingness, like absolute void.
Exactly. And finding that, this vast emptiness, it really forces them to question everything. What's the point of their work? What's the meaning behind guiding souls if that exists?
Wow, an existential crisis for angels. That must have been perspective-shattering.
You would imagine so. And it seems to push the conversation towards the evolution of consciousness itself.
How so?
The idea of an ideosphere comes up. It's like ideas themselves are living things, evolving. It draws on hypotheses from the biologist Jacques Monod.
Ideas evolving like species.
Sort of. And Edmund Wells really hammers this point home. The main goal, the real stake, isn't just saving individual souls. It's advancing the entire field of consciousness.
And the enemy in that.
Ignorance. The ultimate adversary is ignorance.
So they're fighting a cosmic battle for understanding.
That's the frame, which then leads into this event called the Battle of Armageddon.
Okay, that sounds serious. Is this the biblical Armageddon?
Not exactly. In this context, it starts when these wandering souls appear.
Wandering souls. Who are they?
People who died by suicide or murder victims, they're kind of stuck, tormented.
Right. So what happens in the battle?
Initially, the angels try empathy, love. They try to, heal these souls. But then Igor has this realization.
Igor, one of the humans they guide.
No, sorry, this seems to be another Igor, perhaps an angel or someone involved in this conflict. He realizes these rays of love light the angels are using, they can be weaponized.
Weaponized love.
How? He uses them strategically. But the ghosts, the wandering souls, they fight back with their own weapons. Hate, mockery, negativity.
So it's a spiritual war. How does it resolve?
They realize love and hate aren't quite cutting it. The strategy shifts. They start using the collective power of human culture.
Culture, like art and music.
Exactly. Art, music, literature, all the great achievements of humanity become this force field, this weapon against the negativity and despair of the wandering souls.
That's incredible. Human creativity is a spiritual force.
A really powerful metaphor, isn't it?
It is. So after all this, what's the next step for the angels themselves? What are they striving for?
Well, they're currently at the level of a 6, which signifies being an angel. The next goal is to become a 7.
And how do they do that?
By reaching 700 points, presumably building on the 600 needed to escape reincarnation. And Edmund Wells offers a thought on true love here. He sees it as the union of two complete beings, maybe hinting at a path towards that higher state.
Two whole individuals coming together. Interesting. What about the original 3 humans? Jacques, Venus, Igor. Do they reach their 600 points? Do they find resolution?
They each find their own kind of resolution, yes. Jacques meets Natalie Kim. She's also a writer, interested in hypnosis, believes in past lives.
Sounds like a good match.
They have this instant, deep connection. It brings him fulfillment, and his writing flourishes. He writes a final book connecting all his previous work.
Nice. And Venus.
Venus finds happiness with a man named Raymond Lewis. What's interesting is he also lost a twin before birth, just like she supposedly did in that past life memory.
Whoa. So they fill a void for each other.
That's the idea. Their union seems to resolve her chronic migraines, too. She retires from acting, finds peace.
And Igor.
Yes.
His path seemed the hardest.
It remains complex. He dies, gets drawn towards the light, but then a silver rope pulls him back to Earth.
Back to Earth. Why?
It's not entirely clear, but he connects with a psychoanalyst named Tatiana. She's intrigued by his illness, naval cancer, linked to psychosomatic issues. He ends up embracing this connection, this situation. So they all find a form of resolution, but maybe not the straightforward escape we might expect.
Individual paths, individual endings. What about the narrator Angel? You mentioned he had his own difficult experience earlier.
Right. He actually shares his own story of attempting suicide in a previous life and becoming one of those wandering souls for a time.
He experienced that himself.
Yes, and he describes the company bitter, depressed suicides, drug addicts. It was grim. It gave him a very stark understanding of the consequences of that kind of act.
A harsh lesson learned firsthand. And what about Edmund Wells, the mentor figure? Does he reach level 7?
Well, he disappears eventually, goes off to explore another galaxy.
Salutes.
Leaves a final message, though. It's a riddle. How do you draw a circle in one continuous stroke?
I don't know. How?
The answer, he explains, is you change your plan. You don't draw on a flat plane. You move inward from the edge to the center in a spiral.
A spiral. Like spiritual evolution.
Precisely. He says that's the key. And he clarifies the 6 designation. It means 6 spiritual. Spirituality is that journey to your own center.
Wow, okay. So that's his final wisdom.
Seems to be. The whole thing wraps up with the narrator and Wells observing new student angels by this Conception's Lake, choosing souls to guide. A cycle starting again.
Exactly. And one of those new angels, it's Jacques Nemrod, the writer soul the narrator guided. He chose to become an angel too.
Ah, so he completed his journey and chose the next step. It really does come full spiral.
Nicely put. Yeah, Verber builds this incredibly intricate, imaginative world exploring death, the afterlife consciousness.
Definitely. We've touched on so much death as a transition, not an end. The afterlife having its own structure, souls journeying through reincarnation, influenced by karma, heredity, but also free will.
And this bigger idea of spiritual evolution, moving towards higher consciousness, battling ignorance.
Yeah, some really surprising concepts in these excerpts. Navigating death, angels as guides, using culture as a force. It's definitely not standard stuff.
It certainly gives you a lot to chew on. Which leads us to our final thought for you, the listener. Thinking about all these perspectives, life, death, reincarnation, angels, nothingness, evolution, which of these ideas hits home for you? Does any of it make you look at your own life, your own journey, just a little bit differently? Something to mull over, for sure. And please, keep the sources coming. If there's something you're curious about, something you want us to dive into, let us know. We love exploring new territory.